In the last section, you learned about WFS and how these services are used to provide feature-level read and write access to Geoserver data stores. In this section, you'll learn how to extend a responsive OpenLayers interface appropriate for either a mobile or desktop browser, with some special capabilities, geolocation and feature editing. You'll learn about geolocation. Then you'll create a simple OpenLayers mobile-friendly web app. You'll learn about Bootstrap and jQuery and make your app responsive. Finally, you'll incorporate feature editing from the last section to wrap up this course with a responsive, mobile-friendly feature editing web map app. Let's start off with geolocation, adding the user's location to the map. You will learn about the topic of geolocation and different methods for geolocation. You'll learn some challenges with it and strategies for successful geolocation. Finally, we'll look at an OpenLayers geolocation example, which we'll be adapting in the next video. On a mobile device, even the desktop, a map of the current location is usually most relevant to the user. Geolocation works by detecting location from the hardware through an API call from the UI. After the user has granted permission, an object containing coordinates is returned to the map interface. The interface usually displays the location on the map as a symbol and pans or zooms to the location. For example, most mobile phones have the capability to assess location through GPS, cell tower location, or Wi-Fi. Chrome and Firefox use Google's location services, while Safari uses Skyhook. The geolocation API is usually extended beyond that which is offered through HTML5 through the map client API of your choice, in our case, OpenLayers, of course. For example, OpenLayers directly extends the HTML5 API through its own class, while Google Maps uses proprietary data to improve location accuracy. As you can see, the geolocation story is not very straightforward since there's a lot of different cases depending on your browser and depending on the mapping client you're using. And they're not only getting data directly from the device, but also using external sources. As you've probably noticed throughout this video, I've often used the word if. If the user is prompted to share their location when a geolocation request is initiated and they allow that permission, then you'll successfully get some geolocation data. Whether or not it suits your accuracy needs is another story, but it's a good idea to have some kind of fallback and also to use some best practices. For example, making it clear why you're asking for a location and to ask for locations only when the user might expect. Since it is personal information, a user doesn't usually like to share this information unless there's a good reason for it. As of the most current versions of most of the browsers, geolocation is only allowed in HTTPS domains or hosts. So if you plan on using this in production, you're going to need to make sure that you're hosting on a server that has all the certificates, SSL set up and all of that. In our case, fortunately, on a local file system, this is not necessary. So we won't be running into that issue, but you'll need to take care of that when you're running this in production. It's a good idea to have some backups in place, as I mentioned. This is one of those reasons. Another method of geolocation, which can serve as a backup, is through the IP address. Actually, the geolocation API does use IP address when finding geolocation. So if the user allows location through their browser, this will not be an issue. So this is really only for a backup. Geoserver has an extension for doing IP-based location lookups. Unfortunately, I've done quite a bit of testing on this and I can't seem to get it to work, and the documentation is also very limited. You can probably get this to work by coding it up yourself, but I'm not going to cover that here. Here's an example of geolocation being used in an OpenLayer example. Note that some of these features at the bottom, for example, accuracy, altitude, heading speed, may or may not be available on your device. And in this case, I clicked on track position. And generally, it asks for permission when you're tracking position when you start to turn on location. I'm not sure why it didn't in this case. Some of the settings may have been stored. As we go on, you'll see many examples of that permission dialog coming up, and I'm sure you've probably seen it in your own web browsing as well.